Good morning, Sioux Falls. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the 2021 legislative edition of Good Morning, Sioux Falls. My name is Jeff Griffin, and I'm President and CEO of the Greater Sioux Falls Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. Yesterday's tragic events in our nation's capital demonstrated us how ever important it is to be vigilant in fighting for our freedoms and in having proper and responsible leadership in our country, and that starts locally. It starts on the local level and the state level, and we're here to admire that today and celebrate that today with our partners in Pierre. And we send out our thoughts and prayers to our friends Senator Thune, Senator Rounds, and Congressman Dusty Johnson for the work they're doing to do our country's work. We're grateful for that. Similar to other events over the past 10 months or so, this year's event is a little less traditional. Instead of gathering as a community in person for breakfast and coffee, you are joining us virtually in the safety and warmth of your own home or office. We look forward to a day where we can gather again in person. In addition to the virtual presentation, you will notice the format for today's Good Morning Sioux Falls will be slightly different as well. Typically, we kick off the event by introducing new CEOs and managers, and we will look forward to doing that in the spring. Over the duration of this morning's event, we will have 5 panels who will have approximately 15 minutes to discuss their positions on issues important to Greater Sioux Falls. So with that, let's jump right into the program. I am honored to introduce our moderator for today's event, Bob Sutton. Bob began his current role as President and CEO of Avera Healthcare on June 18, 2020. He has more than 25 years of professional leadership experience, most recently as Avera's Executive Vice President of Human Resources. Bob has also served as President of the South Dakota Board of Regents and completed his term in 2019. Prior to his work in healthcare, Bob was the Executive Director for the South Dakota Community Foundation. Bob, thank you for taking the time to moderate today's event. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Jeff. Good morning, and good morning, everyone. It's an honor to be here today as we start the legislative season in South Dakota. It's a big day. As a 25-plus year former resident of Pierre, I can tell you Central South Dakota is getting excited to see all legislators come to Pierre, spend a little bit of time, and make things very well in South Dakota as they do each year. The format today is relatively simple. We're going to do introductions, very brief introductions of each of the panelists, and then we're going to move directly into questions. Again, as Jeff mentioned, each panel is going to be limited to 15 total minutes. There will be timers, and so just want to make sure that the legislators are aware that you'll have up to about 3 minutes to answer your questions and then address anything else that you would like. So with that, let's get started with introductions. The first panel today are 3 legislators. Senator Larry Zickman from District 14. Senator Zickman is the Vice Chair of Retirement Laws, a member of Military and Veterans Affairs, and Commerce and Energy Committees. Senator Reynold Neseba, District 15. He's a member of Appropriations, Operations and Audit, Legislative Procedure, and Retirement Laws Committee. And last but certainly not least, Representative John Hanson from District 25. John is the Chair of the Judiciary Committee, Vice Chair of Legislative Procedure, and a member of House State Affairs. So let's get started. Senator Zickman, your dedication to addressing the needs and concerns of those in military service includes your work with the South Dakota Veterans Cemetery. What legislation will you be working on this year related to your work with veterans?
Thank you, Bob. First of all, I want to welcome everybody, and I want to...
There, you might just want your mic.
And thank you. First of all, I want to welcome everybody, and I've been a member of the Chamber for over 20 years in some capacity now, and I want to thank our veterans and our military that are out there. I'm going to be working on several bills this year. One is, and most of them, of course, are attached to the cemetery. One is a department bill that will discuss and talk about a burial cost for the dependents of veterans, and we didn't have that in the legislation. That needs to be added to the legislation. What it does is it states that a charge, a fee for the burial can be charged up to a certain amount. And that is a department bill, and I'm carrying that for the department. The approval of, I'm going to do a bill probably for the approval of spending the interest funds from the endowment fund that we have established. We have to raise by 2023 $3 million, and we need to put into law that we can use some of those interest funds to help raise some of those funds. So I'm going to probably do a bill on that. And then we're going to look at trying to seek one-time funds for the endowment fund. Like I said, we have to raise $3 million for that endowment fund. And so we want to try to raise, hopefully, enough money to take care of that so we can start getting interest in, drawing interest for the repair and maintenance of the cemetery. And then we're going to look at trying to get some funds for Slip Up Creek Road, which goes around the cemetery. That's going to be around $3 million. So those are just some of the, and also I might do another one on costs for burial guard units. We need to look at increasing their costs and giving money to them. But those are some of the bills on veterans bills that I'll be doing, along with supporting whatever comes along. I understand there's about 3 or 4 more different bills for veterans coming along. So I also serve on the Transportation Committee, and that's going to be an interesting committee too. So those are the bills, Mr. Sutton, that I'll be doing.
Well, thank you, Senator. It sounds like you certainly have a busy session ahead of you, and you've been there before, and you know how these things work. So certainly that work on behalf of the Veterans Cemetery and the work that you do is important, and thank you for it. Senator Nessebar, your work in Pierre as an appropriator often relates to education. As a professor of economics at Augustana, you understand the need for an educated workforce in our state. How will your work in Pierre help improve funding for our workforce and the workforce of tomorrow?
Great. Thank you for that question. Thank you for that question, Bob. You know, yesterday's announcement out at Southeast Tech was really great news for all of South Dakota. Being able to have money for the Dakota Core Scholarship for our tech schools, and the $50 million donation for the first Premier Needs-Based Scholarship is important, with a pledge for another $50 million. And then the governor made a request, which was great because it's the same request I made after her budget address, which was that if we're going to set $50 million aside, we should set that $50 million aside for a needs-based scholarship. Now, I was a little concerned yesterday that not all private colleges and tribal colleges were not included in that announcement, and so I'm hoping that we can work on that and broaden that to include all publics, nonprofit privates, and tribal colleges for needs-based scholarships, because that has been an ongoing need in South Dakota. So I do spend most of my time, Bob, on appropriations. I do have another dozen or so bills drafted, and maybe I'll just point out 3 of those. One of those I want to bring was a constituent bill from someone here in Sioux Falls, to be able to bring a bill forward that would allow municipalities that have a home rule charter to do ranked choice voting. Oftentimes in our mayoral and city council races, we have an election, nobody gets 50%, we have to do a runoff election a few weeks later. It costs cities additional funds to run that second election. This would be a permissive bill for cities that are interested to allow them to do ranked choice voting if they choose. So that'll be one of the bills I'll be bringing. A second one I'm going to be bringing is a Juneteenth holiday bill. This would create Juneteenth, June 19th, as Freedom Day, Independence. It's another holiday for us in the state in the month of June. It's a perfect time for us to be able to have to learn about our own history, to learn about the Emancipation Proclamation, and it's great for tourism, right? This would be, I can imagine this becoming an important holiday here in Minnehaha County as an opportunity for celebrations. And then finally, I started a conversation last year about body cameras. We're continuing to use more body cameras across the state in our police departments, and what we need is a summer study. We need to get all of the stakeholders around the table to be able to have legislation that will guide us when those cameras need to be on, when they need to be off, and under what conditions it becomes a public record. So thank you for that question, Bob.
Great, thank you, Senator Nessebar. There's no question about the importance of the work that goes on in the Appropriations Committee, and anyone familiar with the process knows that it seems like that's a process that's happening separately from almost everything else that's going on in the Capitol, but actually it threads its way through everything else going through the Capitol. So thank you, Senator. Representative Hansen, you have spoken in support of good government being an open government on the campaign trail last year. As promised, you are working on an open government bill to require that meeting notices, agendas, and minutes be posted on one state website to make the information more readily available and accessible. Please tell us why you are working on this change and why you think it's important.
Well, thank you, Bob, and thanks to the Sioux Falls Chamber for having us here this morning. I do believe that that open government is good government, and that we ought to do everything that we can do as a legislative body to ensure that the citizens of our state have the information so that they know exactly what their government is doing on their behalf. So I am working on a bill. It's a concept that I've been kicking around for a couple years, and it's been discussed among other groups in the past. This would create a centralized website run by the state that would accept meeting notices, meeting agendas, those sorts of documents, meeting minutes for local governments, city councils, county commissions, school boards, so that there's really one easy to access centralized location that people can go to. It would have higher functionality than what's available to citizens today. So for example, you'd be able to subscribe to maybe your school district or your county commission and put your email in the system, and every time that they publish some sort of document, you'd get a notice, and so you'd know what's going on with your local government. It would also have an archive feature, which really, that information isn't readily available today. So if you wanted to go back a couple months ago because maybe you missed something in the minutes and you want to look it up, it would be right there for you. So I just think the more information that we can provide to citizens, the more accessible that we can make that information to people so that they know what's going on in their local government, the better. So I'm going to start that conversation this year through a bill, and I hope that my legislative colleagues will agree with me.
Thank you, Representative Hansen. That's important work, obviously, and important that the public stay informed and engaged, probably as much as important now as it has ever been. So thank you for that work. Okay, I know that the Chamber is going to keep me on time here, so thank you for your answers. Do we have time for a little bit of still open dialogue, or is it time to move on? We do. So anything else that you'd like to touch on? Any one of you, if there's other topics that you'd like to touch on that you haven't had a chance, Senator Nesbitt, I see you grabbing that microphone. So let's see if there's something you'd like to touch on, and Senator Zickman or Representative Hansen, you as well.
Yeah, I would just comment that I do like Senator-elect Zickman's ideas. I do think we need to find money, the $3 million, to pave that road. We're putting together a really beautiful military cemetery out there, and we need to make sure that we have an appropriate road out there to do that. And I like this idea from Representative Hansen as well. I mean, to have more open and transparent government, to have a better understanding of what our local governments are doing sounds like a great one. And I think it's just an example of, again, I'm the one Democrat up here today. There's only 3 of us in the state Senate and 8 in the House. But so many of these ideas you could see aren't necessarily Republican or Democratic ideas. They're simply ways for us to advance the interests of the people of South Dakota, and I look forward to working with both of these gentlemen.
Thank you, Senator. Representative Hansen or Senator Zickman, any other thoughts? Go ahead, Larry.
Thank you, Mr. Sutton. Well, I want to thank Senator Nesbitt for that compliment, and we do need to get that road finished. We're going to try to look at turning that road, hopefully, into a state road rather than, which is now wanting to be somewhat of a county road or township road. And we also need to get that endowment going. Senator Nesbitt and I have worked on also, we worked across lines, and I want people out there to know that. We've done a couple bills together and on some things, et cetera. So I'm going to also be looking at doing a couple of collector car bills. I'm in the collector cars, and we have about 52 different collector car groups in the state, and along with a lot of people that own collector cars that aren't members. And so we're going to be doing some of that. And the other stuff with the budget and the things that we have to look at the COVID. And this is a very serious thing, and we're going to be tackling some things down the road with the legislature. So it has to be a cross the border thing between the Democrats and Republicans. We have to work together.
Thank you, Senator-elect Zickman, and Representative Hansen. You've been in the Capitol long enough to know that senators always jump in front of representatives, so this didn't come as a surprise to you, even when they're just moving over from the other house, Senator Zickman. So go ahead, John.
Thank you. Well, I just wanted to add to my gratitude for Senator Zickman's work with the Veterans Cemetery and all that he's done for the veterans. I think he deserves a tremendous amount of praise for the work that he's done in that regard, so thank you, Senator-elect, for that. And I'm honored to speak after you anytime. Also, I just want to mention, I will also support the Juneteenth holiday when that comes over to the House. I've had a number of conversations with constituents about that, and it's a priority to many people out there. So I agree with Senator Nessebar on that, and I'll support that as well.
Well, thank you again to each of you for not just your thoughtful answers, but for your willingness to serve. It's incredibly important work, and obviously, as you have seen this morning, districts 14, 15, and 25 are well represented in Pierre. We wish you three the best during the legislative session. Stay safe, most importantly, and we look forward to hearing and seeing the work that you do. Now I'll turn it back over to Jeff.
Thank you, Bob. This is a good time during this transition to talk about a long-standing initiative, probably the longest-standing initiative of the Greater Sioux Falls Chamber of Commerce, which is advocating on behalf of our business community. The Chamber has an experienced and dedicated advocacy team that actively lobbies in Pierre during the legislative session, attends all City Council meetings, all County Commission meetings, and communicates our positions to our congressional delegation. In addition, our advocacy team works to educate our members by hosting various events throughout the year, such as our legislative coffees, Sioux Falls Day at the legislature, our Inside Washington series, candidate forums during election cycles, and more. We believe a politically educated and engaged community creates a strong and thriving community. Deborah Owen, our public policy director, will represent the interests of the Sioux Falls business community during our 2021 legislative session by serving as the Chamber's full-time lobbyist in Pierre. To guide our lobbying, the Chamber's Issues Management Council develops a legislative platform which is reviewed and approved by the Board of Directors. You can find this document on our website under the Advocacy tab. As we prepare for the 2021 legislative session, it is important to keep in mind that most of the impactful work done in Pierre is reported in our weekly Advocate newsletter. If you are not receiving the Advocate but would like to receive it, please let us know. To keep tabs on all legislation the Chamber is lobbying on, be sure to follow our bill tracker published each Friday during session. It can also be found on the Chamber's website under the Advocacy tab. It's so important that our business community has dedicated representation in Pierre because this tradition goes back, if you know me, you've heard me say this before and you're going to keep hearing me say it. Our country had volunteer groups of business and community leaders who gathered together for their best interest before we had a country. And it's important that we keep that independence from government and work with them for the best solutions for our neighborhoods, our businesses, our families, and our schools. And the Greater Sioux Falls Chamber of Commerce is here to support those efforts. So with that, it looks like our next panel is ready to go. Bob, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jeff. Yes, they're here. We're ready to go. This is a very efficient operation here. If this is anything like the Chamber, which we know it is, it's very, very well done. Keep paying your membership dues and get other people to join. Well, our next group today, 4 representatives. Representative Rhonda Milstead from District 9. Representative Milstead chairs the Commerce and Energy Committee and is also a member of the Transportation Committee. Representative Doug Barthel, District 10, a member of Judiciary and Local Government Committees. Representative Linda Duba from District 15, a member of the Appropriations Committee, Operations and Audit, and Retirement Laws Committees. And last but certainly not least, Representative David Anderson from District 16, a member of the Commerce and Energy and State Affairs Committees. Good morning to each of you. Representative Milstead, we'll start with you. Thank you for serving on the Mental Health Mental Health First Responders Task Force. It's important work. After 5 months of hearings and conversations with the medical and first responder community, the task force is proposing several bills to ensure access to care. Because many of our first responders are volunteers, they do not have access to mental health resources, which could help them deal with the aftermath of traumatic events. Please share about the proposed legislation and how it will help our first responders have access to mental health services.
Thank you, Bob. And first off, I want to say that I applaud the Chamber for events like this. Just as Representative Hansen mentioned, it's very important that the public understand and have knowledge of what's happening with their laws and with their government. So you're taking this effort to inform people is fantastic. As far as the task force goes, we had 15 members on that task force. 8 of them were legislators. 7 of them were non-legislators, but they formed a great working partnership with us because they very much helped us to understand the needs, the culture of first responders, and some very realistic solutions as well, which is where those bills came from. A couple of them that I will touch on. We identified 4 tiers of traumatic mental health injuries to first responders. And we felt very strongly that within those first 2 tiers that we could mitigate a lot more in terms of their mental well-being. And so we have proposed a bill that will lay out grants for training for first responders. Peer support teams across the state and critical incident teams are critical to the mental well-being of our first responders. Getting in there after a traumatic event and addressing that event is key to solving those issues. And so the grant proposed would allow that training to happen. I heard from a first responder in the northern part of our state on Monday who said, if we would have had anything like this 20 years ago, alcoholism, divorce, and suicides would not be at the level that they are today. And we all know that traumatic incidents are increasing constantly. Another bill that I'd like to address is an insurance policy. We had an insurance company step up to the plate and offer a statewide plan for all of the volunteer first responders in our state, of which there are 8,500. I think that's a significant number that I don't think most of us realize. 8,500 volunteer EMS and firefighters in our state who not only give up their private time away from their jobs to serve their communities, but they don't have access to payment. If something happens to them, how do they find a counselor, and how do they actually pay for that counselor, because the volunteer dollars don't allow for that. And so this insurance policy would give them coverage for something like that. So it's the beginning steps, and we appreciate our first responders, and we really want to help them in any way we can because they do a great service to our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Milstead, not only for the important work, but for that thoughtful answer, and we'll be watching closely as that develops throughout this session. Representative Barthel, as a former chief of police for the city of Sioux Falls, what are your thoughts on the approved marijuana ballot measure and constitutional amendment?
Well, first off, thank you to the Chamber for hosting. I always enjoy doing these and appreciate being a part of it. And thank you, Bob, for hosting as well. I do want to draw attention to your opening comments. You talked about how Central South Dakota is excited to see us come back. We'll see if they say that after 10 weeks of us, but we'll do our best to try and keep them happy. But I'll start out with I have no intention of trying to go against the will of the people. The voters approved marijuana both medically and recreationally with the 2 measures that were on the ballot. But I do have some concerns with it as we go forward, and so certainly I'm going to be watching that closely and make sure that we've got proper regulations in place so we don't end up with some of the issues that others have seen. I found it interesting a recent speech by the mayor of Colorado Springs talked about some of the issues that they've seen there, and it kind of foreshadows what we might be facing here. First off, the perception that youth would not, it wouldn't increase if it became legal. Well, the fact remains that because they know that it is legal, they see others doing it, they maybe even see their parents doing it, they found that their use of marijuana among the youth has actually gone up. And then the other part of the issue is, the edibles that, frankly, I think a lot of the kids are attracted to. In Colorado in 1995, the THC content of edibles is about 13%, and in only a few short years after that, when it was legalized, it's now over 55%. I don't believe there's a piece in our measure that passed that regulates that THC level. So that's certainly can be a dangerous thing and something that we'll want to watch closely. The other thing is the cost. I think there's a misperception that this is going to raise a lot of revenue. Well, sure, it's going to raise some tax dollars, but you've got to look at the other costs, the societal costs, the law enforcement, treatment costs, how it affects a whole host of things. So Colorado has found that it hasn't been a big windfall. They aren't making a lot of money on it because they've got all these other costs, whether it be homelessness and law enforcement costs. There was a national survey that was done on in the state in Colorado, and they found that heavy users of marijuana actually has gone up. Alcohol drinkers drink about one drink every 15 days. One in 15 alcohol drinkers have a drink a day, whereas 1 in 5 marijuana users use every day. And probably one of the more concerning statistics that I heard was the motor vehicle accidents. Prior to the marijuana being legal, about 6% involved marijuana usage when it was a fatal accident. Now over a fourth of their accidents are marijuana related. So certainly some things that I'll be watching closely as we work through the session.
Thank you, Representative Barthel. Obviously, the people have spoken, and now it's really up to the legislature on how these types of things are going to be regulated going forward. So lots of people will be paying attention to that. Good morning, Representative Duba, and thank you for being here. This summer, you served on the Mental Health Services Task Force. Can you explain 2 initiatives from the task force, Text for Hope, and how funding for a virtual crisis team may improve South Dakota's mental health services?
Thank you very much, Bob, and again, thank you to the Chamber for inviting us here. The format today is excellent, and it gives us an opportunity to speak to you and keeps us all in our own safe spots. So yes, I'd love to talk to you about, first of all, Text for Hope. Text for Hope is a program that is really focusing on both high school and now into middle school students. Now, I also work in the Sioux Falls School District, and as you know, we all were virtual for the entire fourth quarter of last year, and we still have over 2,000 students right now in the Sioux Falls School District that are in our virtual academy. And with that comes the lack of social opportunity for those students to mix. And so there are times when children are isolated and or feel alone, and in this time of social distancing and a pandemic, the pressures that they may be feeling due to their parents' job loss or other concerns that they have, their anxiety can build. And so Text for Hope is really using social media through various channels, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, and it's a very simple program by where there is a Text for Hope number, using Text for Hope, where these children can reach out, and that number actually is a text that goes to the 211 Helpline Center, and this gives these children an opportunity to speak to someone and get help for themselves or maybe one of their people that they're concerned about, a friend, a parent, someone who's near and dear to them. And in this time of real uncertainty in our country, this is going to be a critical program. Now, the Department of Social Services has got it in their budget, and I'm going to help them carry that over the finish line. The second program I want to talk about, we've had in place now for about a year and a half, and it's the virtual crisis teams. Very simply, we have the opportunity right now, and we have in 18 counties, and we're adding 6 more. We have iPads in cop cars, and let's just very simply put it that, in our sheriff's offices. These individuals, when they're called to mental health crisis situations, they now take with them a virtual crisis person, a mental health professional, who then can enter the conversation with the individual in crisis, and the actual law enforcement officer can step away, monitor the situation, but we're able to help that individual at that point in time. We're having great success here with these mental health crisis situations, where in 75% of the cases, the person is able to remain in their home, and we, within 24 hours, can get them the mental health resources that they need. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda, for not just those answers, but that meaningful work. As someone who works in healthcare, the need for mental and behavioral health services is only increasing during this time, this extraordinary time. The mobile crisis teams are difference makers, and though being able to do those assessments in those law enforcement vehicles makes a difference when we're talking about facilities that are hundreds of miles away from where many people live in South Dakota. So thank you for that work, and that program is showing some very, very good results. Representative Anderson, this summer and fall, you have been busy working with business interest groups to sponsor a COVID-19 liability protection bill. This is important work to the Greater Sioux Falls Chamber, and we appreciate your work on this legislation. Can you walk through the highlights of this important piece of legislation?
Sure. Thanks, Bob. Welcome to all of you watching online this morning. We started talking about this, really a few conversations, even right at the end of session last year, because we could see how this was going to play out, and weren't able to get anything put together at that time, but shortly thereafter started visiting with different groups. It's certainly been a business group concern. It's a concern for school districts. It's a concern for counties, really all levels of government, nonprofit organizations. And so there's been a wide range of people involved in the discussion and the development of a bill. I've got a copy in my pocket here, but it's not quite ready for release, but maybe later today or tomorrow we'll get the bill out there. It's modeled after a bill that was passed in the state of Iowa during their legislative session, and then we've developed and expanded on that to make it fit South Dakota. It's basically providing immunity from lawsuits, which we believe would be frivolous lawsuits against businesses, schools, and all the different organizations. The one caveat in that is that if someone willfully, with intent, transmits the disease, there's no immunity for that case. It's simply to protect those businesses that are trying to stay open, doing the best that they can to stay open, and continue to serve the people of the state, whether it's at the schools and other areas, to protect them from being harassed by possible legal action. And so that's kind of the basis of the bill. Again, it's got widespread support from lots of different entities around the state, and so we hope that the bill is quickly dealt with and passed in a very strong support throughout the legislature. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Anderson. You can always tell a veteran legislator when they're carrying 6 days before session starts, they've got the bill and looking for co-signers with them at an event like this. So way to have that in your coat pocket. Thank you all for those answers. Anything else? We've got just a couple of minutes here. So anyone, anything you'd like to touch on that you may not have and that you'd like to share with the virtual audience of the Greater Sioux Falls Chamber today? Sure. Dave, go ahead.
Okay, I'll touch on one other. First of all, again, I want to express my appreciation to Dana and Miles for the announcement that was made yesterday. That is just enormous for the state of South Dakota. It's a fabulous thing, and we need to do our part to follow up as legislators in that effort. Kind of not really part of that at all, but something else I've been working on with a number of others for about 2 years now is a bioprocessing initiative in this state. We grow lots of crops. We have timber in the western part of the state, and if we can turn those raw materials into various products, we can do things in this state that we've never dreamt of before. And that's where we need to partner our business industries and our universities in one facility where they do this kind of research. And so we continue to work on that initiative and are hopeful to get that completed in this session as well.
Thank you, Representative Anderson. Anything else from any of the panelists? Representative Barthel?
Well, just a comment. I joked a little bit at the beginning, but the reality is, although you may hear and see things that we don't necessarily always agree on, excuse me, and you wonder, boy, what are they up to out here now? The reality is we do agree on nearly everything, and we do get some good work done, and in the end, there's some great legislation that comes of it, and frankly, you should be rest assured and know that your districts and your state is well represented. I'm certainly proud to be a part of that process.
Thank you for that. And again, thank you to the four of you, Representative Milstead, Representative Barthel, Representative Duba, and Representative Anderson, not just for being here today, but for your public service, for giving of your time and talents to leave here, leave your homes, and go to Pierre and do the work of the people of South Dakota. So thank you so much. We'll transition again. We'll send it over to Jeff, and we'll bring panel number 3 up here for another enlightening conversation. Thanks.
Thank you, Bob. In the previous segment, I mentioned the Chamber's legislative platform and how that document guides our lobbying efforts in Pierre. This is a good time to go over some of the highlights of this year's 2021 legislative platform. There's a real solid bricks and mortar structure to that here at the Chamber, and the platform comes through the Chamber's Issues Management Council, which conducts research. We hear from proponents and opponents of matters affecting business. These efforts, combined with actively following and monitoring legislative activity, guide our decisions in developing the legislative platform. We also, we represent nearly 2,000 businesses who employ 80,000 citizens, so we do some surveying as well. The Issues Management Council makes platform recommendations to our Chamber's Board of Directors, who ultimately is the final decision-making body for the Chamber. Here are some of the highlights of this year's platform. Workforce education. K through 12 and post-secondary education is so important. Last year, the Chamber worked diligently to keep the dual credit program funded and available to lower-income families. We will continue to do so this year. As has been mentioned, yesterday's announcement from our Chamber board member Miles Beacom, coincidentally, and Dana, along with Governor Noem, of funding a needs-based scholarship program for children in South Dakota is very important to our workforce development. Of course, the Chamber supports economic development, workforce-focused programs, addressing infrastructure, revolving loan funds, workforce education and housing, and grants to offset certain taxes for qualifying projects. The Chamber believes our economy is best served by allowing free and open competition in the marketplace in an environment that encourages business development and expansion. In addition, the Chamber opposes unnecessary government intrusions. In regards to diversity, inclusion, and equity, the Chamber recognizes the growing diversity in our state's population, and we embrace the opportunities of this diversity that provides cultural and talent-rich community. We will resist initiatives which inappropriately sanction or discriminate against individuals or groups. Tourism and visitor industry. The Chamber supports the funding mechanism for visitor and tourism industry as it continues to be a very important and vital part of the greater Sioux Falls and South Dakota economy. Agribusiness industry. Agriculture has been the primary economic driver in our state since 1889. The Chamber supports legislation that enhances agribusiness in South Dakota, including the expansion of agricultural products, services, and technologies. If you want to learn more about the Chamber's 2021 advocacy work in Pierre, please reach out to our public affairs team. Now I'll hand it back to Bob.
Thanks again, Jeff, and what a great example of the tremendous work that's done by the Chamber. I just would like to take this opportunity to thank Jeff and his staff for the great work they do, the leadership that they provide in our community day in, day out. advocating on behalf of the business community, and also making sure that the environment is right to bring new businesses in is unmatched in our country. And Jeff, you and your team should be applauded for that. Certainly the board contributes to that, but the work you do every day is appreciated. All right, we're on to the third panel. This is the panel we're referring to as small but mighty. We have two legislators with us this morning on panel number 3. And first of all, Representative Stephen Haugard from District 10. Representative Haugard is a member of the Appropriations and Legislative Procedure Committees. And Representative-elect Taylor Rayfeld from District 14, a member of the Health and Human Services Committee, and the Judiciary Committee. So Representative Haugard, we'll start with you. As former Speaker of the House, and Speaker, I know you know, is a title that you get to keep for life. So I'll call you Speaker every time I see you from now on. And now serving in your 4th term, your leadership roles in the legislature have provided additional insight to some of the problems that plague our communities. Please share your insights regarding corrections and CARES Act funding, COVID-19 treatment concerns, and the changes in our drug laws. In addition, if time allows, please share your concerns about the need for more probation and parole officers in our state. Representative Haugard.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate the Chamber putting this together to have us be able to come forward and talk about some of the issues that will be discussed during the session. One of the things I was thinking about as I was sitting here listening to some of the other presenters is that the likelihood is we're probably going to raise more questions this session than we'll actually answer. So we'll try to come up with some solutions, but I think there's so much new ground that's developed over the past 10 months or so that we're going to be forging ahead, trying to get things done as much as we can with the time that we have now. But I'm sure that as we go through the summer interim session, there'll be a lot of things that'll be addressed there too. And then there's also the concern about potentially a new wave of COVID, of some new strain. So a lot of issues, but in regard to specifically corrections, there were a lot of changes. As I looked at some numbers from March, April of 2020 compared to March, April of 2019, it indicated that simple assaults, ag assaults were up anywhere from 35 to 65%. It also indicated that disorderly conduct was up 525% in the Sioux Falls area. So that prompted a lot of concern as far as what incarceration is going to look like. And I think what probably was going on, and Representative Barthel maybe had a better inside track on this than I would, but I think the charging process changed to try to keep people out of the system as much as they could, or out of the jail itself as much as they could. So that's resulted in a change in the charging, and it resulted in a change in the incarceration rate. In fact, I spoke to the warden the other day, and we were approaching 4,000 inmates earlier this past year in 2020, and that number dropped by 700 over the course of the year. And I suspect that was in large part due to the COVID concerns, trying to keep as many people out as possible. So one of the things that we need to ramp up is we need to ramp up the opportunity for on-street or in the community supervision, and that's both at the initial phase, which would be probation, and then also from those who are leaving the penitentiary system and going into the community again, and that's parole services. So 2 different branches. The Unified Judicial System covers probation, the executive branch covers parole. So I think we need to funnel some more resources there, try to keep people in the community as much as possible, and hopefully make a change and reduce the recidivism rates. And I think that's maybe one of the positives that comes out of this situation with COVID, is that there might be some more funds available for the on-street or in the community supervision. Plus, what I observed so far as the numbers, I believe there was approximately $88.3 million that was shifted from the general fund dollars and used CARES Act funds. So there should be money there to do some of the things we need to do. So thanks very much to the Chamber. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Representative Haugard, and thank you for your leadership as Speaker and for all that you bring to Pierre, especially the years of experience that you bring to the House Chamber. Next, we're going to hear from Representative-elect Taylor Rayfeld. As a newly elected legislator, you are not new to the halls of Pierre. Your work on behalf of nurse anesthetists, and trust me, I work in healthcare every day. Yes, that's a hard word to say. I call them CRNAs. That's what I call them. But your work on behalf of nurse anesthetists provides a depth of understanding on how legislation gets passed in Pierre. What are key legislative issues that you will be bringing to the 96th legislative session?
Thank you. I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited for the people of District 14. I'm honored to have been elected, so thank you for that. I'd like to answer this question kind of in two components, and part of that is that I'm a freshman legislator, so I feel like there's a certain way to approach my first session and get my feet under me a little bit. So the first thing I really want to emphasize is that I'm ready to listen and learn, especially from my constituents who have issues or topics that they really are interested in. I'm interested in learning from them. And then as far as the learning component goes, I have a wide variety of representatives and senators that have such a great knowledge base. I'm really excited to pull from them and learn in that realm as well. And then as far as myself, I'm really excited to contribute my areas of expertise as a nurse and also as an educator. And then I think it's really important that I have that perspective as a mom of a 3- and 5-year-old, kind of the chaos of life as a young mom and a working mom. I think I can bring that fresh perspective, especially to relate to our district, which is very heavily family oriented. And then also collaborate. I think right now our country is in disarray, and I think it's really important to collaborate across party lines and to really take that to heart and really make that a part of who I am as I'm going into session. As far as actual policy, I'm interested in so many different things, but the main areas are healthcare, education and young family issues, as well as business. And within healthcare, I'd really like to kind of give you some topics that I'm working on. Mental health is definitely a big area. We're doing a lot of things right in South Dakota with mental health, but I think there's a lot of areas that we can improve on. Long-term care, I am concerned about the ability of our, especially rural communities, to keep their long-term care facilities open. I think we need to enable them to be able to do that. And then, of course, licensing definitely is an issue that I'm interested in, as that's what I worked on this last legislative session with nurse anesthetists. And if you're ever wondering how to pronounce nurse anesthetist, you can say anesthetist. That's the easiest way to say it. It actually ends up coming out right. But we actually worked on a licensing bill, and there's still some licensing issues in our state in regards to not just APRNs or advanced practice registered nurses, but kind of mental health has some issues. There's also some other areas that I think that we could improve on. And then as far as education, young family goes, we have really some issues, I think, in regards to daycare and accessibility to daycare in urban communities. Daycare is incredibly expensive. Young families are having a hard time figuring out how to support themselves while working in a dual income families. And so I intend to concentrate on that issue as well, especially being my husband and I are both nurses and understand what that is to have dual income families and dual people working within the households. Otherwise, with business, I am a small business owner, so business is very important to me. I have a lot to learn in the business area, but I'm also really, really excited that I have that perspective and the ability to understand that we need to enable our businesses to be successful, keep our taxes low, and have reasonable regulations.
Thank you, Representative Rayfeld, and I get the pleasure and privilege of learning every day from nurses. Now I'm learning how to pronounce words from them, so thank you for that, and congratulations. I am a resident of District 14, and I actually have all 3 of my legislators in the room today, so it's nice to see all of you, and I'll tell you all of my problems and issues as soon as this panel is over. Representative Haugard, we have a few minutes here, and just what are you hearing from constituents? What are things that are going to come up in Pierre that you think we're going to see this year from the people in District 10 or in your past role as Speaker, which is obviously a statewide responsibility? What are you hearing? What do you think is going to surface while we have a couple of extra minutes today?
Well, I think the biggest concern is probably the ongoing business issues that were the result of the shutdown, which was nationwide and even statewide. So there are plenty of businesses out there that could benefit from those grants or the loans, whichever form they might take. And we needed to get that money out the door, and it's been a little bit delayed. So we need to work on that. We need to see if there's some way that there can be a reopening of those applications, or if there's those that have applied that have not been approved, if there is just glitches there that need to be addressed. I think that's one of the bigger things that we need to take a look at. The CARES Act funds were really intended to help the citizens and businesses. It was not a focus that it should be for state or local government. And so we need to get past the idea that we're going to hold this money. We need to get it out the door if we're going to use it. And for the money that has been appropriated, we should find again, appropriate places for that to go. It shouldn't just be consumed for the sake of it being there and potentially available. But we need to comply with the CARES Act mandates or protocols and requirements. So that's probably the biggest issue I think that we're going to take a look at.
Thank you, Representative Haugard. There's no question that those dollars getting put to use and into use in the economy as quickly as possible is critical, and we appreciate all the efforts on that that have been done to date. Representative Rayfeld, anything in the last minute here maybe that you might have that you'd like to share that you haven't already?
Well, COVID-19 has definitely been an area that I've been interested in and been very involved with as far as being an educator and having to understand the impacts of that on education, every impact that it has. And I think that it's important as we go forward to continue to concentrate on ways to keep ourselves safe. And I plan to really approach that with integrity, I guess is the best word that I can say. I'm excited to get my second dose of my vaccine today, so I'll be letting everyone know how that goes, and that's about all I have to say.
Thank you very much. It is an important day, actually. There are lots of people who are going to get that second dose this sometime throughout the next couple of days, and that's a great move forward. There's no doubt about it. So thank you. Thank you, Representative Haugard. Thank you, Representative-elect Rayfeld. The people, again, of District 10 and District 14 are in good hands with these leaders in the legislature. We'll transition to the next panel. I'll turn it over to Jeff. Jeff, we're 3 out of 5 done. We're on the downhill slope.
All right, I was just checking the online presence, so thank you guys. We have a nice crowd watching from home or their office, and we appreciate that. I was appreciative Representative Haugard mentioned the CARES Act dollars and getting those into businesses' hands. We've been working very closely with small businesses, and there are some hurdles with that because it's well-intentioned on the federal level, but to get those dollars flowing through the state and into the marketplace, there's been some hurdles to get through. We're appreciative of the legislature's efforts to help simplify that for us, and Governor Noem's office for being responsive as well. But if you're struggling with that, please make sure you're reaching out to the Chamber of Commerce, and we can help connect you with the right people. As I already covered, each year the interests of our business community are well represented in Pierre by our public policy team. Though the Chamber has a history of excellence advocating in Pierre, 2020 was an especially remarkable year, and here are a few of the highlights. I'll start with a general overview and then highlight specific legislation victories. Of the 26 bills the Chamber actively supported, 23 were signed into law for an impressive 88% pass rate. Of the 11 bills the Chamber actively opposed, all 11 failed, 100%. In total, when the Chamber advocated on a certain bill, we won 92% of the time. Let us now highlight a few of the key bill victories. The Chamber led the effort to get Senate Bill 70, also known as the Spanish Driver's License Bill, passed from day one. This important workforce bill was signed into law by Governor Noem. Senate Bill 144 would have restricted the successful dual credit program for high schoolers that helps them transition into the workforce or higher education. The Chamber opposed this bill, and it ultimately failed. The Chamber supported House Bill 1008, which was an economic development bill that legalized industrial hemp. This bill helps expand our state's agribusiness sector. Other key victories involved House Bill 1057, House Bill 1100, House Bill 1235, Senate Bill 40, Senate Bill 72, Senate Bill 157, and Senate Bill 170. And for those of you that worked on those issues with us as members of the Chamber of Commerce, you know the heavy lift that goes in to that effort. And that lifting begins with events like this and the relationships we value with our elected officials. Whether they're in agreement with us or disagreement with us, we keep those open channels of communication. So we look forward to another successful year advocating on behalf of the business community. To stay updated on what is happening in Pierre, please keep an eye out for our weekly policy newsletter, The Chamber Advocate, our Chamber Bill Tracker, which is updated on our site weekly, and our monthly magazine, Chamber News. If you have any questions about certain legislation or want our public policy team to consider advocating for or against a bill, please reach out to Deborah Owen or Justin Bentas or, of course, myself. So with that, Bob, I'll turn the floor back over to you.
Thanks again, Jeff, and thank you again sincerely for all the work the Chamber does to keep us as members informed. You heard about the bill tracker. Pay attention to that. Read the advocacy report. Find out what's going on in Pierre. Be engaged in this process. This is a citizen legislature, and without us as business leaders being involved and engaged, it quite frankly doesn't function as well. So don't be afraid to touch base with your legislators. One thing about the Sioux Falls Chamber is, in my 20-plus years in Pierre and in the Capitol during the session, Sioux Falls Day is a big day. Now this year there may be changes to how many people show up in the Capitol and on what days and what those look like, but that doesn't mean you can't still be engaged in the process. It doesn't mean you still can't reach out to your legislators via email. You can leave messages. They get lots of messages. There's no question about it. I know they read them all. You can also attend legislative coffees, attend Cracker Barrels when your legislators are back in your districts on weekends and other times during sessions. So all of those things the Chamber facilitates and facilitates extremely well. So our next group, panel number 4, we're going to introduce brief introductions again and then go right into questions. First, Representative Aaron Healy from District 14. Representative Healy is a member of the Education, Health and Human Services, and Legislative Procedure Committees. Representative Mark Willardson from District 11. Mark is a member of the Commerce and Energy and also the Transportation Committee. Representative-elect Richard Thomason from District 13, a member of the Local Government Committee and the Taxation Committee. And Representative Jim Bolin, District 16, Chair of Retirement Laws and a member of Education, Local Government, and State Affairs Committees. Welcome and good morning to all of you. Congratulations, Representative-elect Thomason, on the election. Representative Healy, you have been a tireless advocate for education in our state. The business community, including the Chamber, has supported your efforts with early learning in previous sessions. Please share with us your work related to early learning and higher education tuition programs for individuals with disabilities. If time allows, please also share your work in the arena of women's health issues as well.
Well, thank you. Yes, so I'm so happy that Representative-elect Ray Felt addressed this issue during her time, stating that childcare is really difficult to find and it's very expensive in South Dakota. And we're seeing that in Sioux Falls too. Well, early learning is in the same boat as well. And so what we need to do is focus on early learners and how we can give everybody access to early learning opportunities in our state. Last year and the year before, I introduced a bill that would create an early learning child advisory council. And what this would have done would have created a board to really invest time into early learning and to understand the tools necessary in South Dakota to get more kids involved in programs, whether that would be at home or in an actual facility or even in our public school districts. Unfortunately, the bill did fail, but I think the silver lining is that we can use this opportunity to really inform our citizens of the state of South Dakota as to why early learning is so important to everybody. It really helps us develop a really good workforce. It helps parents who are both active in their own job, and it really keeps kids safe and gets them prepared for kindergarten. As for, higher education, this year I was approached by a constituent of mine who is interested in allowing online coursework to be included in visually impaired tuition. Right now, visually impaired people are offered 225 credits of tuition for higher education, but that doesn't include online coursework. And that becomes a really large problem when people who can't see can't drive at night and can't make it to their classes. It's also a problem because of COVID. Thank you for your time, and I really appreciate everything that the Sioux Falls Chamber has done, and thank you for the opportunity to be here today.
Thank you, Representative Healy. Good morning, Representative Willardson. As a member of the Commerce and Energy Committee, you are keenly aware of how our state pays for our roads. Can you explain the issue of electric cars on South Dakota roads and how that may hinder traditional funding?
Well, thank you, Bob, and thank you for the question. As you can see, I'm enjoying the last few days of having not to wear a tie before we go into session on Tuesday for that part of it. And thank you to the Chamber for modifying this event so that we could, participate again this year. I would prefer to be in the hotel with everybody in the same room, but of course that's just not working out this year. On to electric cars. One of the things that I've been concerned with in my legislative career deals directly with fairness issues in taxation. Since the automobile was first hitting the roads, we've had issues with, how do we maintain those roads? How do we build new roads and such? And one of the systems that we've used that's worked very well for us in the past has been a gasoline tax. So how much does that tax involve? Well, if we assume that, you drive a vehicle that gets 15 miles to the gallon, and we assume that you drive the average about 15,000 miles a year, you pay 28 cents per gallon in fuel taxes to the state of South Dakota to help maintain our roads and build new ones. So that equates to about $280 a year. Well, as technology has increased and alternative fuel vehicles have come about, electric vehicles in particular, they don't pay any gas tax, obviously. They don't use gasoline. And so I'm bringing a bill this year. It's not a new bill. It's been around before. I have a copy in my pocket, like Representative Anderson, and I also have a pen, like a good insurance agent. But we will bring a bill to charge a fee at the time that you register your vehicle and pay your license plates for electric vehicles so that we give them the opportunity to participate in maintaining our roads.
Thank you, Representative Willardson. We look forward to hearing that discussion and what takes place. Obviously, our transportation system is incredibly important to the ongoing commerce in the state of South Dakota. Representative Thomason, first, tell us a little bit about yourself. And second, what are some things that you have been hearing from constituents after the election and while you were campaigning and as you prepare to go to Pierre?
Yes, thank you very much to the Chamber for allowing us to come today, and as Representative Willardson said, also for the accommodations. I moved to Sioux Falls when I was very young. I went to Patrick Henry Middle School and then went to Lincoln High School. Upon graduating college from the cities, I was so thankful to be able to come back and start a career here in commercial real estate, where I've been able to really grow the business and just enjoy being back home. Sioux Falls has really shaped who I am today, and I'm so thankful to be able to give back when I go out to Pierre. Obviously, you get a lot of questions as a legislator or a legislator-elect on different things that are going to come up, whether it's funding, whether it's with education, healthcare, etc. One thing that has happened for me that I've gotten a lot of questions about is the halo effect of COVID, not only about today, but about 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road. The students that were affected that are maybe a little bit behind, businesses that it may take months or years to get back to normal in terms of getting people to come into their restaurants, getting people to come into their businesses. One thing that has been a concern is there is a vaccine coming out, which is great. It's going to really help people have the ability to get back out and to feel comfortable. However, it's not going to be just a 180 overnight. And so I'm going to be looking at different things in terms of the halo effect, as I said, on what may be coming up that will affect everyone in the future to come with what has happened.
Thank you very much, and again, congratulations on your election to the House. It's great to see the energy of young new leaders in the state of South Dakota, and Representative-elect Thomason mentioned going to Patrick Henry Middle School. I went to middle school with Patrick Henry, so that's the difference between his age and my age, clearly. Senator Bolin, I'm not going anywhere near whether you knew Patrick Henry or not, Jim, but as a former teacher and coach, school funding and related issues are always on your radar. What are your thoughts and concerns on the school funding formula for the FY 2021 year and beyond? And in addition, if there's time, can you explain how the Redistricting Commission works, the timeline it must follow, and other related information as you have served on previous redistricting committees? And good morning, Jim.
And thanks to you, Bob, and to the Chamber for this opportunity. As far as school funding is going to go, okay. As far as school funding is going to go, the governor's recommending a 2.4% increase, which will get us right back on track as far as the Blue Ribbon Task Force that came out in 2015 and 2016. I think there'll be some efforts to maybe boost that up, maybe to 2.5%, just a little bit more. I met with school superintendents in the area south of Sioux Falls just this week on Tuesday, and they were very, very pleased with the funding recommendations that were made in the budget address in December, and I'm quite confident that the legislature will approve at least a 2.4%, which is higher than the rate of inflation over this last year. I do think long-term, though, we have an issue with school funding, and I've mentioned this to people before, is that our current school funding formula is based on the idea that inflation will always stay below 3%, because it's the rate of inflation or 3%, whichever is less. I think we all have to be a little bit wary of the fact, or aware of the fact, that we're pumping an incredible amount of money into the economy right now. And people that I've talked to who know more about economics than I do are genuinely concerned about the inflation genie getting out of the bottle, which we experienced in the 1970s. And if that ever happens, and if we ever have a situation where we have an inflation rate greater than 3% per year, it's going to be a major, major issue for schools in the state. You know, Bill Janklow changed the formula back in 1995, and since that time, I believe we've only had 2 years where the rate of inflation was just slightly above 3%. So the formula has worked over the last 25 years reasonably well. But if we ever get into an inflationary cycle, we'll have a problem, and that's something that needs to be addressed. Now, talking about redistricting, I served on the commission or the committee in 2011. I'm the only person left in the legislature. I'm the only one of the 105 who was who's still in the legislature from 10 years ago, who served on that particular committee. Will be, I can't say it, I don't know who will be appointed. There'll be essentially an equal number of House and Senate members who will work on this project. One thing for sure, the Sioux Falls metro area, I think everyone can agree on this, the Sioux Falls metro area will gain one more legislative district at least. So there will be there'll need to be some adjustments in the boundaries. It's a political process. I've been to a number of seminars, webinars, things on it. In fact, as soon as I get done here, I'll be going home and getting on Zoom and getting on another one that's promoted by NCSL on this particular topic. So it will be a background issue during this session, and the work will be done this coming summer. Thank you.
Great. Great, thank you, Senator Bolin. Thanks for your insight and leadership. Redistricting is obviously incredibly important, and you're exactly right. When you think about inflation and you think about the dollars coming into the economy, it will be very interesting to watch. Many of us recall, at least you talked about the 70s, the 80s, not only inflation, but what interest rates were like. And to talk about mortgages at 15 or 17 or 18% is completely lost on people who believe they're 3 to 5% all the time, and they always have been. So we have to watch inflation, obviously, but it's been many years, as you mentioned, 25 years with only 2 years with that number above, with CPI above 3%. Quite extraordinary, and probably the longest time frame in our history as a country that they've been so depressed. So it'll be interesting to watch. A minute or two left here. Just anything anyone would like to. Yes, Representative Willardson, I wanted to say, by the way, that's a fine-looking mask. For a Vikings fan, I will never say go Packers, but I'll say go NFC North. How's that? That's as much as you're going to get out of me.
Well, thank you. As a lifelong Packer fan, I enjoy that. One of the things that I wanted to comment about, we've talked a little bit about the marijuana issue that passed on the ballot and such. And as legislators, I think it's safe to say that we're going to learn far more about marijuana than we ever imagined that we would in the coming 2 months. One of the concerns that I have is that there's so many different areas that we need to address, whether it's licensing, dealers, or passing, laws and rules as far as how everything is going to work. That I'm concerned that of our ability to get that done in 37 days. Now, keep in mind, our system is very efficient, and it's designed to be that way, and it does work very well. It's just with the magnitude of things that we're going to have to address with these issues, I'm hesitant about if we're going to be able to get that done in the short time that we're in Pierre. I visited with the Secretary of the Department of Revenue, Mr. Terwilliger, and expressed those concerns, and he echoed many of them. And his department is working on them as we speak. With the various things that we're going to need to address. But I would ask for patience from the public, because this is going to take a while. If we're not able to get everything done in the 37 days that we've got scheduled, I believe it would call for a special session that we would need to set up so that we can complete that work. As you know, these laws are going to go into effect on July 1st. So I would just, ask for patience and ask for guidance. Please, email us if you've got concerns on these issues. We do want to hear from you. So thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Representative Willardson. Anything else? Representative Healy, Representative Thomason, or Senator Bolin?
I'll speak up really quick. During the headlights moment, the 1 minute sign went up and I was like, oh, we're moving on. So I didn't really get a chance to say anything about what my plans were for this year for early learning. We won't be introducing legislation. We are working with the Department of Social Services, the stakeholders and I, to create a solid list of who those early learner facilities and childcare facilities are in our state. One of the problems that COVID presented was we're not able to give out the CARES dollars to all of the childcare facilities that are just not registered with the state. So the state will be working on a better list, and we will continue to educate legislators and the communities about early learning so we can really push this issue forward in the future, because there's so many problems that we see that need to be fixed to have a stronger child care and early learning approach in our state.
Thank you. Anything else from the panel? Well, again, thank you. Districts 11, 13, 14, and 16 are very well represented in Pierre. Remember, Representative Willison just said it, they want to hear from you. They want to hear from us. So don't be afraid to reach out to your legislators. Stay in contact with them. And if there is a special session, Representative Willison, to address specifically the marijuana issues, don't eat the brownies. Thank you again, and we'll see you in Pierre.
All right. I didn't see that on the, thanks, Bob. No, I didn't see that on the script, but well done, well played. I think it's important to recognize, it's been mentioned several times, the marijuana issue going in, and Bob said earlier, the voters have spoken, and now it's to the legislature to figure it out. And we do need some patience. So the chamber's at the center of that, advocating for employer rights and how this is going to look. And Mayor Ten Haken has organized a group. We're speaking with some other communities that have been through this. But the voters have spoken. The struggle is we had a lot of money from outside of the state of South Dakota coming in to get the legislation passed, to get the vote passed. We don't have the same out-of-state support to get it, to get boots on the ground of how it's actually going to look and be implemented. So I admire what's been said this morning about the patience that's going to be needed for that effort. So as we transition to our final panel of the day, we just give a brief overview of some of our upcoming chamber events. The Greater Sioux Falls Chamber of Commerce is once again partnering with several organizations to sponsor legislative coffees, which are free and open to the public. The first of our 3 coffees will take place on Saturday, February 6th for Districts 6, 9, and 13. The 2 remaining coffees will be held on Saturday, February 20th for Districts 10, 12, and 14, and Saturday, February 27th for Districts 11, 15, and 25. And please note, all 3 coffees will be held on the campus of Southeast Technical College at the Hub from 10 a.m. to 11:45 a.m. All proper social distancing and hygiene precautions will be taken. Sioux Falls Day at the Legislature is scheduled for Wednesday, February 17th in Pierre. More information on this important event will be hitting your inboxes soon, so please be on the lookout for that. And lastly, please join us next Tuesday at 4 p.m. for our virtual mixer called Unmuted. Participants will break into small groups for conversations where your mute button will not be needed. This event is free to attend for chamber members, but you must register to get the Zoom link to attend. And these have been a real fun, really proud and happy with my team making this adjustment, because the unmuted events, and we can't be together for these social events, but they break you out into smaller groups with questions, and it's fun, and you actually get to interact with other chamber members in a different way. So join us for that if you haven't already. They've been very well attended. So with that, I will turn the floor back to Bob. Thanks, Bob.
Jeff, thank you. I don't think we're going to get to hear from Jeff again, but again, we're glad Jeff is in Sioux Falls. We're really thankful for his leadership here at the Sioux Falls Chamber and the great job that you do. So thanks very much. Good morning to our final panel of the day, the 5th panel. We're going to do brief introductions. First, we have Representative Jamie Smith from District 15. Jamie is a member of the State Affairs Committee. Next, Senator Jack Colbeck from District 13. And Jack is a member of the Appropriations Committee. And finally, Representative-elect Greg Jamison from District 12. He is a representative-elect, but a returning legislator, so certainly knows the process. Greg is going to serve as Vice Chair of the Local Government Committee and a member of the Taxation Committee. So welcome, gentlemen. It's good to have you here. We'll start with you, Representative Smith. Over this last year, and this is a very timely question, this morning especially, the civil discourse has been certainly strained. South Dakota has always been a state where we can talk to each other and not at each other, and we can enact legislation that is good for our state. You recently served on a downtown Rotary panel and raised the issues with concerns on civil discourse. Can you provide further insight in this issue? And if there's time, which we should have, can you also speak to the recent passage of the legalization of medical and recreational marijuana, which has been certainly a topic this morning, but is going to be a big topic in Pierre this session?
Yeah, thank you very much, Bob. And, you know, thank you for the opportunity, and thank you to the Chamber. This event each year is kind of a kickstarter to the legislative session, and it brings us all back together with our colleagues. And we, you know, at least I know for myself, it gets me excited for going to Pierre and doing the work of the people. You know, I submitted topics that I'd like to talk about a couple weeks ago, and civil discourse was that topic. And today it is an extremely timely thing to talk about, as always. But one of the things I've really tried to tell people about my experiences in Pierre is that while there aren't very many Democrats right now in Pierre, and the Republicans, the Republicans in Pierre really are my friends. And we enjoy each other. We work hard. We disagree vehemently with one another on certain issues. But you can disagree with people without being disagreeable. And we need to keep that in South Dakota. We've seen what's happened in our country, and it's reprehensible. What happened yesterday at the Capitol should never have happened. Should never have happened. And what we can do in South Dakota is continue to understand that the people I work with in Pierre are my friends, they're my neighbors. Our kids go to school together, they play on the same ball teams together. You know, that is important. You know, and one of the things that is a benefit to us in Pierre is that we all go there and we all live in the same community away from where we normally live. And I think that helps us build relationships. You know, and it is about relationships. So the Chamber does a great job of networking and building those relationships for people in our community. But I want the Chamber to know that that is how a great majority of your leaders in South Dakota approach this job. And as the leader of my caucus, respect is the first thing that we talk about. And I just don't want to lose that in the state of South Dakota. So I implore my colleagues across the aisle to continue to work on this, and we will do it because of that we can all be better. It was very disturbing during the last election cycle that I did see some of the national rhetoric coming into the people that I was talking to, going door to door, things that happened to my own family going door to door, and the things that get posted online or the things that were even said about me. You know, at the end of the day, we all love our kids, we all love our mom and dads, and we all want to do what's best for the state of South Dakota. Now, Bob, you asked about marijuana. Medical passed by a great margin, and the recreational passed with 54% of the vote. And as was stated earlier, the money may have come in to pass those, and we don't necessarily have everything in place to do something with that, but we got to remember what the will of the people is. And our job is to go there and make sure that these laws are implemented in a responsible manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Smith. Senator Colbeck is a member of the Appropriations Committee. Jack, could you speak to us today about your concerns on of how CFR funding, the expenditure of one-time funds in the proposed budget, along with balancing dollars to help address COVID concerns such as unemployment, all of those things kind of wrapped into one topic, and how you're going to deal with that. And then if there's time, talk a little bit about your concerns with election laws. So that's it, and you'll get a sign that says you have 1 minute left, way quicker than you think. How's that?
Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you, Chamber, for inviting us up here today. And I just want to comment on Representative Smith's comments. Somebody asked me what was my most disappointing thing that happened in the legislature last year, and I said one of the things that disappointed me was the fact that we could not work together as far as the House and the Senate on some issues. That I think that we need to do that a little more to bring, you know, some better representation, not only within our own two chambers, but I think it would be a beneficial effort towards the people in the state of South Dakota as well. And we do disagree on a lot of issues, but I think that a little unity hopefully would come forth this year, and we can make things a lot better for the state of South Dakota. Getting back to the appropriations and the question, we've been dealing all summer long with the CRF funding money, and as most people probably have heard, we had a balance left of like $580 million, of which we had a appropriations meeting, and we had a special session of where we allocated like $400 million of that to small business grants, $40 million to startup business grants, money to nonprofits, money to the healthcare associations, and money to the education. Just to give you a little up to date, if you go to the BFM website and go under COVID-19 and go under CARES Act funding, you can find how much of that money has been spent and those people, those entities where that money has been granted to. We had a guidehouse, or Guidehouse was hired as a third party to take care of all the applications. So far today, we've had like 4,684 applications that were filed. Approximately 2,500 of those applications have been reviewed, and we have paid out in excess of $200 million total. There's still a lot of time. We did get an extension from the federal government on those payouts. Originally, it was set for December 30th. That has been moved into next year, so we do have a little more time for that. So that is some things that we're going to be dealing with, and we do have a lot of one-time money. Our revenues in the state of South Dakota have been tremendous this year due to the fact that we did not shut the state down. We did not have lockdowns. We had tourists was very good. The economy was very good. We're going to have an excess of $100+ million of one-time money that hopefully, as appropriators, we're going to be able to put that money to good use for the people of the state of South Dakota, and with the support of the House and the Senate members, that things are going to be looking pretty good for the state of South Dakota in areas of education, healthcare, agriculture, small business. So with those things, we're going to be working on marijuana will be a big issue in the appropriations, as you all know, and you've heard enough about that today, Bob. So I won't talk any more on that. So thank you, and please contact us, contact me, come out to Pier, say hello. We enjoy seeing our constituents and our people here in Sioux Falls. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Senator Colbeck. There's no question about accessibility of our legislators. Any of you are familiar with legislatures from other states. You go through staff, and you go through this, and you go through that, and you hopefully at some time get to see a legislator. I just heard Senator Colbeck on the radio about 3 days ago, or last week, whenever it was, giving out his cell number for you to call on the radio. So talk about an accessible citizen legislature. When you put I don't put my cell phone number out on the radio, so but Senator Colbeck does, so good for him. Representative-elect Jamison, congratulations again on returning to Pier. As a returning legislator and a former city council member here in Sioux Falls, your experience provides unique insights of the impact on local communities, pretty specific with the legalization of recreational and medicinal marijuana. Please explain the challenge from the perspective of local government entities. In addition, if time allows, share your thoughts on the funding needs for county government, such as an alcohol tax or the problem of double taxation on public projects.
Sure. Well, thank you, Bob, and thank you, Chamber, for having me today. Yes, I'm a returning legislator, but it's still a new process to me. Everything has become paperless now, and that's all new to me, and there's some exciting aspects to that are different, but I'm looking forward to getting back there. You know, we've talked a lot about marijuana, and I know others have today, and that seems to be the hot topic. It was for me while I was running for office. Everybody wanted to know about it. As a guy who was on the city council for 8 years, you start to think about, well, how does that impact local government? And not just municipalities like Sioux Falls, but counties and townships and other things all over the state. And the connection really is that the marijuana legalization is going to bring a whole new industry to commerce in our community. What used to be under the table and illicit and illegal, for sure, is now becoming legal. And there's going to be business opportunities for individuals all over our state, whether you're growing it, selling it, testing it, regulating it. All those things are going to create opportunities. And for me, there's just an interest in understanding how all this blends into the state's constitution, because it was a constitutional amendment, so it impacts everybody and the state equally across the border, all across the borders of municipalities and counties. And so the interest is, well, how do those local municipalities and governmental bodies interface with that? And there's a lot of language that's written in the amendment that allows for local bodies to become involved. They can regulate the locations where these marijuana can be sold, the time, individuals who are selling it, just some other rules and regulations, let alone the tax revenues that could come in on the sale of that. So as I see it today, there's a lot of ways for the local government to participate in its implementation within the state. There's opportunities for everybody to be involved, whether you're somebody who's purchasing it, somebody who is testing it, or distributing it, transporting it, lots of different ways. And Bob, I know you talked about some other issues regarding local government, and I'm just privileged to be a vice chair of local government. I'm just excited about local government, but there are some other issues that are facing coming up regarding double taxation issues. We're also serve on tax, and there's a lot of questions there. There's raising revenues for counties regarding the sale of liquor. And the connection there is really that the counties are the ones who are charged with handling all these issues when people are arrested. And just like marijuana, the same thing's going to happen with the counties and the municipalities. There needs to be some back and forth and or allowance for those local governments to receive revenues and to participate in this process, because then at the end of the day, they'll be regulating it. So a lot of connections to marijuana, and it seems to be the hot topic, but it was for me during the election as well.
Yeah, thank you, Representative Jameson. I think that's a very important point. In all the years that I spent around here and listening, just the discussion about county funding and how we fund county government today based on the responsibilities that county governments have, especially in law enforcement, has always been a topic of great interest. And certainly as a member of the local government committee and the taxation committee, it will be certainly right in your wheelhouse. So we'll look for you for your leadership and guidance on that, and certainly chamber members need to weigh in. We've got a couple of minutes here. Thank you all for your answers. Anything you'd like to touch on, Representative Smith or Senator Colbeck, Representative Jameson? Just a quick minute or two just that you might have. We'll start with you, Senator Colbeck. To stay in the spirit of senators get to go first. So,
thank you. Appreciate that. We're all equal. One question that Bob brought up too was on the election laws, and as people in our county here in Minnehaha County and maybe a couple other counties across the state, when it came to the count of the ballots, it took quite a while for the ballots to be counted, and it took some time. In fact, most districts and precincts probably in the Minnehaha County and in Sioux Falls here took until almost 6 o'clock on Wednesday night before there was a final tally and the final winners were announced. And I think the constituents and the people that voted, I think they have a right to get that information quicker and easier so that they don't have to wait around for a day or two to find out if their particular person that they were supporting or were not supporting won or lost. We do have a statute in the state that does require county auditors to do certain things. And we're going to probably bring a couple pieces of wording to change that statute a little bit so that one of them would be like the absentee ballot, that they would be able to open those up the day of the election and start tabulating those. The absentee ballots, as you know, we had 40,000 plus absentee ballots in Minnehaha County, which really put a strain on the auditor and the counting. And so if they can get some of that work done prior to the closing of the polls, before the poll ballots are delivered to the courthouse, that should speed the process up a little bit. And so we're going to be working with that, whether or not it gains any traction yet this year. But I think that the people and the constituents that voted and went to the polls or absenteed or dropped it off at the county courthouse or however, I think that they deserve that a little bit more of a speedier return on the tabulation of those, and we'll take that probably, I don't know, maybe local government will get that one. Greg, huh? Okay, thank you.
thank you, Senator Colbeck. Representative Jameson.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. It's always funny that senators get to go first. I don't know why that is, but there's only a few of them. But I just wanted to say one thing about last night's breach at the Capitol. As an elected official, I'm watching this stuff unfold, and I'm thinking, how does something like this happen? I mean, how does it get to a place like this? And while I was in the legislature before, some of the things we worked on were transparency in government. And I believe that's one of the keys to creating confidence amongst the voters and the public, is if you have transparency, everybody gets to see what's happening. There's no concern about something getting done underhandedly. And so anything we can do along this way to increase transparency, I think is only going to help us long term. It'll always help us to be more transparent. Even when we think, gosh, this really shouldn't be out in the public because it might be maybe embarrassing or something about it. If we can fight always to have it in a better transparency about it and think about long-term building confidence with our voters and the public, I think we'll all win. So I'll continue to fight for more transparency as I can, but it's a challenge out there, and I think one of the pieces missing in all of this was transparency, and I think going forward we just need more of it.
Thank you, Representative Jamison. Representative Smith, any final thoughts?
You know, I just I want to say thank you for all of the legislators that spoke here today, to the chamber for this opportunity, and I do look forward to the work that we will do, and there'll be very hard days coming up, but with the help of everybody working together, as Senator Colbeck said, and unity that we're all South Dakotans wanting to work for the betterment of our state with different ideas of how to do that. I know we can get it done. So thank you, Bob, and thank you to the chamber for this opportunity, and we'll see you on the other side of the session.
Sounds great. And that's all we have for today. Thank you to the final panelists for their leadership and their vision for the state of South Dakota and their willingness to serve. Again, I talk about a citizen legislature. These are people that leave their families, leave their communities, and go do the work of the people of South Dakota, and take time to do it, not just during this 38 days or whatever the session is this year, but throughout the year. This is a big responsibility, and they are truly servant leaders. So to each of you, thank you again for joining us today. We hope you found this informative, and we look forward to when we can all be together and do it in person again. Let's hope that's next year, but there's definitely hope on the horizon. In the meantime, we'll see you again at a chamber event, hopefully soon. Be well, stay safe. God bless.